I'm very pleased today to introduce Stephen Smith, who is the person most responsible for inspiring the restoration of the Road of Remembrance Veterans Memorial along the Susquehanna Trail. This memorial celebrates its 100th anniversary soon, and Steve will provide the background of this local historic landscape architecture. Steve earned his bachelor's and master's degrees in mechanical engineering from, yes, Penn State University. He is a retired manager of design engineering at York International Corporation, now Johnson Controls. He continues to consult as a registered professional engineer in the state of Pennsylvania. Besides volunteering and giving presentations, his writings range from an award-winning family history book to over 1,000 local history posts on his York's Past blog at the York Daily Record website. Stephen is a member of the local team of historians that present annually to sold-out audiences actual events that occurred in York County. Please welcome him as our guest speaker today.
Thank you for inviting me to share the Susquehanna Trail history relevant to the Trees for the Trail project. In 2014, one of my World War I related blog posts examined the 1920s tree planting project, commonly known as the Susquehanna Trail Sycamores. And Shelly actually provided handouts from that post from 2014. The War Mothers chapter in York County championed that project as a living memorial to York County's World War I veterans. In that post, I included this view up the trail, intersecting with the Glen Rock Road in the distance. Winter really shows off the light tan bark of sycamore trees. My readers posed questions such as, when was the dedication ceremony held for the trail sycamores? Was there ever a dedication marker similar to the memorials installed in Wrightsville and near Abbottstown following the 1922 Lincoln Highway tree plantings? The Lincoln Highway tree plantings was a project of another organization, the Women's Club of York. A very low percentage of those 1,500 Lincoln Highway trees remain, primarily due to significant road widening, because between 1934 and 1936, a third lane was added to the Lincoln Highway, creating a passing lane which proved to be dangerous, such that the center lane has been regulated for left turn use for quite a while now. While the York County History Center has much information on the Lincoln Highway Road of Remembrance trees, details on the Susquehanna Trail sycamores were elusive. As I delved into other sources about the trail sycamores, I realized no definitive history of the Susquehanna Trail existed. Thus, while continuing my research on the sycamore tree plantings, I expanded the scope and wrote a 19-part series on the history of the Susquehanna Trail in my blog post, where the research utilized scores of 100-year-old newspaper articles from trails, from towns all along that trail. The history of the Susquehanna Trail evolved into one of my most popular talks, which I started presenting in 2016. The full talk is 90 minutes. Don't worry, you're getting a much shorter version here. Essentially, the automotive Susquehanna Trail came about as a result of the Good Roads movement in the United States. Muddy roads, as was shown on the slide there. Many early road maps warned, and this is on, I looked over probably 12 to 13 road maps. Every one had this warning on. It is a folly to drive before allowing rain-soaked roads to dry. Time will not be saved by attempting it. You did not have them AAA back then. You relied on neighboring farmers to bring their horses to pull your car out. And you see the horses coming over the hill in this particular slide. In 1913, the Lincoln Highway Association was organized in Indiana to coordinate and lobby during the first nationwide Good Roads project. When completed in 1926, the Lincoln Highway became the first fully paved coast-to-coast highway, a highway that passed right through York County and in the square in York. The Susquehanna Trail Association was established in Williamsport by businessmen, hotel owners and businessmen in Williamsport. They organized the association February 2nd, 1917, a little over 100 years ago. Just as with the Lincoln Highway Association, the Board of Governors of the Susquehanna Trail Association made site visits to select the existing road segments they would champion. They established guidelines for roadway upgrades, and they lobbied national, state, and local governments for roadway improvements. Initially, the board was made up of only Williamsport businessmen. However, the board was expanded with adding of new members living along each newly selected segment of the Susquehanna Trail. The first road segment, tagged for improvement, was along the Susquehanna River, and thus the name Susquehanna Trail. It extended from Williamsport only as far south of Harrisburg. At the time, 90% of that road was dirt road. An early decision by the Board of Governors of the Susquehanna Trail was to build the trail as a totally concrete roadway. This photo shows one of the first completed sections of the Susquehanna Trail below Williamsport. After contending with dirt roads, can you imagine the driver's reaction when seeing and driving on a concrete roadway? They must have been euphoric. The lobbying slogan was, "We're building a ribbon of concrete through the American Beauty Land." In the second year, April of 1918, to be more precise, the Board of Governors of the Susquehanna Trail Association decided to extend the trail southward from Harrisburg to intersect the Lincoln Highway at either Gettysburg or York. Both Gettysburg and York were invited to put forth proposals as to why they deserved the trail. The board announced on June 12, 1918, they intend to make an inspection trip to this area for the purpose of selecting the existing primarily dirt roads that will be improved as the southern extension of the Susquehanna Trail. At that time, the Board of Governors of the Susquehanna Trail Association included 7 founding members from Williamsport, 3 members added from communities along the trail route to Harrisburg, and 3 members added from communities on the northern extension from Williamsport up in the New York State. So Williamsport businessmen still held a slim majority on the 13-member board. The Williamsport businessmen clearly favored Gettysburg as the southern extension, both then and later, presuming they would receive greater touring traffic to Williamsport if the Susquehanna Trail went through Gettysburg with its popular battlefield. York had an uphill battle to land the Susquehanna Trail. A York newspaper article reported on June 12th of 1918 that a 150-member York delegation in 34 cars, and they chose 34 cars because they thought at least 10 of them would probably get stuck along the way, will caravan to Harrisburg to escort the Board of Governors of the Susquehanna Trail Association back to York. The rules for the caravan, and this is quote, "The drivers will draw for place in line and there will be no racing." Kart racing on streets was big back then, even if it was dirt roads. A supper and meeting with the Board of Governors took place at the York Motor Club in East York. This predated AAA in York by 20 years. The local York Motor Club formed in 1906, and in 1912 they purchased this mansion as their clubhouse. Almost exactly 100 years ago, it is where the York delegation presented their proposal to attract the Susquehanna Trail to York County. The Board of Governors of the Susquehanna Trail Association stayed overnight later on at the Colonial Hotel in York on the evening of June 12th, and then the following morning, a large Adams County contingent escorted the board to Gettysburg to make their case for laying the Susquehanna Trail. For 3 weeks, York and Gettysburg awaited the decision of the 13-member board. On July 1st, 1918, coming up on 100 years, a few weeks from now, the York delegation was notified the vote of the board favored extending the trail through York. Why did the board vote for the York route? Prior to the meetings, the actions of the 7 Williamsport board members clearly showed in newspaper articles they were very favorable to Gettysburg. However, at the meeting, board member and former state senator Walter Merrick from Wellsboro, Tioga County, swayed the board by emphasizing the strategic importance from a military point of view of such an improved direct highway passing through the industrial cities of York and Baltimore. Tourism interests took a backseat to supporting the war effort. Remember, at the time of the vote, the United States was heavily involved in World War I. So because of World War I, it was one of the main reasons we got the Susquehanna Trail. So not only the World War I Memorial Sycamores, but it's like we got the trail because of World War I at the time, or patriotism associated with World War I. With the Susquehanna Trail selected to go through York, the York area basically had the approval to build the trail through York, not in southern York County. However, at the Sunbury meeting on July 17th, after the selection of York being on the trail, the board followed through on Walter Merrick's recommendation by adopting a national goal for the Susquehanna Trail. In the follow-up meeting, they voted to champion State Route 127, running through the south part of York County for improvements. That became the Susquehanna Trail in southern York County. State Route 127 was the York and Maryland Turnpike since 1807 and was commonly known as the Baltimore Pike. Much of the turnpike was, in 1807, built as improvements to the Colonial Joppa Road, a road through Yorktown, from Yorktown to the port of Joppa, Maryland. After it became the Susquehanna Trail, it became Route 111. Thus, by August of 1918, the board had selected the roads in York County they would champion for improvement as the Susquehanna Trail. Board members and locally appointed committees lobbied local business leaders, plus national, state, and local government officials for funding. Once appropriated, mobile cement mixers, as shown here, with the help of mules for grading and transporting materials, started laying the ribbon of concrete that would become the Susquehanna Trail in York County. The York community initially concentrated on concrete laying from York to the Maryland line. This made sense since York had much more trade with Baltimore as opposed to Harrisburg. An improved roadway connecting Baltimore, Maryland was underway less than 3 months following the start of road construction in York. The end of 1920 saw the completion of the Susquehanna Trail in southern York County. it would be 1924 before the section of the trail was completed between York and Harrisburg. The World War I memorial sycamore trees, stretching from Jacobus to the Maryland line, have always been a major point of interest in my trail talks. In the late 1920s, the War Mothers Club of York County had 400 sycamore trees planted along the Susquehanna Trail in southern York County as a living memorial to York County's World War I veterans. I'm a fan of using historic aerial photographs in my research. Therefore, I decided to see if I could quantify the reduction of sycamore trees by sampling a short section of the trail. Aerial photos of a 5/8 mile section of the Susquehanna Trail between Glen Rock Road and Church Road show a reduction in the Susquehanna Trail sycamores from 65 in 1938, 46 in 1971, to 31 in 2014. The systematically planted sycamore trees stand out fairly clearly on the 1938 and 1971 aerial photographs. I decided to take it a step further and drove the Susquehanna Trail from Maryland line, counting all the sycamore trees along the way. I counted the last sycamore just prior to reaching the fire station in Jacobus. My total was 206, compared to roughly 400 trees originally planted per the 1938 aerial photograph. Why the loss of sycamores? There was approximately a 30% loss of the original sycamores between 1938 and 1971 per aerial photo analysis. This photo from the collection of the York County History Center was labeled "Trees Cut Down, Susquehanna Trail South," and dated 1962. In looking at newspaper articles from that time period, it was reported that Med-Ed cut down many of those trail trees when they decided to put a higher electric transmission line in. You can see the original electric poles there, the short one. They decided to put tall ones in, which is where all the tree limbs were. So that's the reason why 30% of them were lost at that time. However, the number of trees, sycamore trees, continued to dwindle after that event. Approximately 20% loss of the original sycamore trees were lost between 1971 and 2014. That was likely due to street widening. You had bigger berms. This was the road in 1968. And if you look at the road, they basically have wider berms, so they're almost right up against the trees. I discovered several tree alleys have been listed on the National Register of Historic Places. An alley is a walkway or street lined with trees or tall shrubs. One such tree alley in good shape is the pictured Legislative Route 1 Sycamore Alley in Halifax, Dauphin County. That particular alley was placed on the National Register during 2007 as a significant example of early 20th century publicly funded landscape architecture. When Halifax sycamore trees, in the application, they indicated that they thought it was a local group that planted those sycamore trees. Well, it turns out it was a state-funded project. When within the Sycamore Alley application, they noted the status of the Susquehanna Trail sycamores in southern York County. And they looked at it in extensive detail. Unfortunately, this was done to contrast the completeness of the Sycamore Alley in Halifax with the losses of the Sycamore Trail sycamores, or the Susquehanna Trail sycamores in southern York County. During one of my first Susquehanna Trail talks, as soon as I showed this slide, a gentleman in the audience immediately commented, "That slide photo brings back great memories. Long ago drives through those sycamore trails in the fall were the best." And he was referring to the sycamores on the Susquehanna Trail. Unfortunately, this is a a photo of the Halifax sycamores in the fall. Now, Halifax community has always valued and protected these alleys of sycamore trees planted, again, as a World War I memorial in 1922. They actually have laws in place to prevent electric lines getting too close, and also preventing street lighting. So they're protected up there. Leave time for Shelly here, but my last page, and essentially, I did a little checking on the War Mothers Club that basically put these trees in place the first time. After many return letters with expired forwarding addresses, I was able to make contact with several of the few remaining members of the American War Mothers at the national and state levels. Shirley Lambert, at the national president, had her assistant look for the York County chapter records in Washington with no success. The most helpful was Esther Bender. She was Pennsylvania State Chapter past president, who checked the state files for the York County records. Esther explained with the close of any local chapter, a requirement existed to forward the chapter records to either the state or the national headquarters. Unfortunately, many of the local chapters did not comply, including the chapter from York County. However, Esther Bender told of hearing about the numerous Pennsylvania chapters of the American War Mothers involvement in the World War I plannings. But she couldn't provide any details. Last November was the 9th time I presented my Susquehanna Trail talk. It was for an OLLI class at Penn State, York. Shelly Riedel was in the class. It was not long afterwards she informed me of her intention to lead an effort to replant the 200 lost sycamore trees. We should all thank Shelly for her efforts. Shelly, you're on. Yep.
This is a typical small world in York, let me tell you. When he put the York Motor Club picture up there, that was my dad's childhood home on East Market Street, and I had no idea it was involved in the Susquehanna Trail development, so now I've learned something today. As I work with many dedicated Rotarians and committee members to restore this beautiful Veterans Memorial, I believe we have found a very special though challenging endeavor. This project has brought together many dedicated York County citizens in an effort to ensure that this century-old historic landscape architecture will remain for future generations. From what we know, this is the only attempt in 100 years to restore this York County treasure. I would like at this time to recognize two of our committee members who have been instrumental in moving this project forward. First, we can't plant trees without the funds required. Our own Rotary member, Mike Summers, has accepted the challenge of raising the money needed to make this Veterans Memorial a reality. In addition, we need the landowners along the trail to give their permission for trees to be planted on their property. Jim Holly, a well-known engineer, has undertaken this vital task, and he just told me we have about 50 trees already committed, which is excellent, and Mike's got a fourth of the money ready to go. So both of these gentlemen reside in the southern York County area and are highly regarded and respected by the local citizens. Without them, this project would not be possible. Mike and Jim, could you please stand as we thank you for your efforts? We invite all of you, each one of you, to participate in this project to leave a legacy by restoring this Veterans Memorial. You can assist by becoming a committee member. The next meeting will be held June 12th at 7 o'clock. We need people to join Mike and Jim's committees. We need people for lots of tasks. In addition, we need volunteers to assist at the tree planting. This type of help could be finding excavators to donate in-kind assistance by clearing brush and trees, augering holes, finding companies with water trucks, making arrangements for wood chips. You name it, we need it, so we'd love to have you involved. During the plantings, we could use people just to check in volunteers as they arrive. Stand there and hand out safety vests, supervise the plantings. Not all volunteers at the anticipated 5 plantings will be digging holes. If you have an interest in doing public relations, we could use your assistance in developing and displaying posters, writing news articles, speaking to groups, and helping with ideas to publicize the project. Each of you could help us now just by forwarding the Facebook link that Bert put on your announcement for today to as many friends as possible. To recognize those who donate, we are developing a donor recognition tree. What could be more appropriate than a tree? For the price of a tree, $300, at our first level, there will be a green leaf, and 3 additional levels, copper, silver, and gold. You can honor anyone who's made a difference in your life via a 3-line engraved leaf that will be added to our publicly displayed tree. Although we anticipate that many of the leaves may honor veterans, we already have many businesses and individuals involved who will be providing a message honoring their staff, their company, someone who made a difference in their life, or a special family member. Almost everyone in this room has a veteran on their family tree. Today we have donations and pledges totaling about $20,000, and actually Mike told me we may have more coming in here. And we are working to meet a budget of almost $100,000. Planting 200 trees takes a lot of things. It might not be just the tree, it's gator bags, it's posts, etc., etc. Some of the budget, as we mentioned, may be made by in-kind donations. We have the endorsement of every municipality in this area of the county. The Boy Scouts, the state legislators, Kate Klunk and Kristen Phillips Hill, and State Urban Forestry Program Specialist Ellen Rohn, Shrewsbury and New Freedom Lions Clubs, New Freedom VFW, and American Legion of Glen Rock. I know that there are many excellent projects that we undertake as Rotarians. However, this may be one of the few that will determine if a York County landmark remains for future generations. I invite each of you to consider joining us in some way to save this very important Veterans Memorial. Thank you for your attention today. We really appreciate it.